You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension.
Good morning, good Friday. Today is March 11th, 2016. It's Week in Review on All Things 3D. We're going to talk about all kinds of really cool stuff that happened in the week this week. Isn't that right, Mike?
Yeah, I think so.
We're going to talk about, we've got Alan from the Talos Principle joining us on the show. We've got HP made an announcement that they're going to tell us more about at South by Southwest. We've got 3DR, the solo drone company. They've announced some software stuff that we'll talk about. And stick around, and the Print Whisperer will give you even more tips on how to improve your 3D print quality.
Improve your life and print quality.
That's right.
It's a twofer. Okay, so I thought I'd start off with this little video that I had put together from my little experience with the Talos Principle. The reason that I got involved with it, I'm not much of a gamer, but as you know, I'm a developer and really immersed in VR.
You're a closet gamer, Mike.
No, sadly not. So I had found out that the Croteam had made some claims that they had ported their Talos Principle to the Vulkan API. So I thought, oh, that's intriguing. So you got a sale from me, Alan, just by that post. So maybe you should do that more. Hey, actually, maybe that may have been the reason. But so I downloaded it and immediately couldn't use it because I didn't have the proper drivers on my machine. But I waited until NVIDIA actually presented those, and I actually need to do this so people can actually see me. And so I finally downloaded them a couple nights ago after playing a little bit of the Talos Principle, and yeah, I found that I could probably utilize a lot of hours playing the Talos Principle, so I can understand why it's hugely...
It's brain-inducing. I mean, it is a brain-building game. It really is. It's one of the only games. It's one of those games that people should play if they ever do play. So,
okay.
It's just beautiful too. The textures and the shadows, the lighting, the scenery. Yeah. The whole game is just absolutely beautiful.
So what's running behind me is what do you want to call it? Their little demo that runs continuously so that it can determine your frame rate. So essentially get some specs on how well the game runs. And I'm running this using the Vulkan API. So I guess this really wouldn't be considered spoilers because I guess this is part of the demo.
Mike, I have no idea what the Vulkan API is. Is Alan going to tell us about it?
We're not there yet. He will. And so don't worry, we'll get into it. But essentially, as you can see here, the game is gorgeous. It's a place that I would like to hang out in VR. Who knows? Maybe we can talk about that a little bit. But yeah, I think it's wonderful. I think the fact is that one of the things that I've known Croteam over the years is for something called Serious Sam, which is almost a 180-degree reversal of this type of game. So hats off to you for creating such a stunning cerebral game, but they haven't given up on Serious Sam. Sam 4. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, no, we haven't. We're still on it, definitely. As a matter of fact, it was made as part of it was a side track while we were working on Serious Sam 4, and now we are back on the track.
So yes, I've seen some of the stills on it. It looks super. If you're not familiar with Serious Sam and you're a shooter, this is the all-time shooter. I mean, essentially, your job is to kill, I guess that's a harsh word, destroy a bunch of monsters, and we're talking tons of monsters. So I guess it's somewhat serious in that perspective. But yeah, I thought it was very fun, and then when I saw this and what this graphics engine can do, but more importantly, what the actual, as I mentioned already, the Vulkan API can do, and I've said that several times now, Chris. I've wet your tongue. So let's kind of get into that. What is Vulkan? And I have a little video that I want to show you of the possibilities in a mobile environment.
What is this?
Now this is obviously Epic Games, who's talking about utilizing this on the Galaxy S7. And this is what they demonstrated at the Mobile World Conference. And what's obviously exciting about this is if you have a Galaxy, and hopefully we'll see some things from Google at Google I/O, you'll be able to have platform-type gaming in your pocket. I know that's always been kind of the allure of mobility, is that you'd be able to do everything in your pocket that you can do outside of it. But I think that's going to happen this year or next year, that you'll be able to either do this or VR in a completely mobile environment at the frame rate and the quality that you're seeing in a, what do you want to call it, a desktop system.
So is Vulkan? You're talking about Vulkan API. So Vulkan API, it's a graphics engine for that goes with Unreal Engine, or what is it?
Ah, great, Alan. How about I give you the opportunity and the floor to talk about it a little bit?
Okay. Well, I guess the simplest comparison would be that it's on the same level as, for example, DirectX 11 or OpenGL. So that's like the first layer the application sees when it goes toward the hardware. If the AIM wants to render something, it has to talk to the API, which is either DirectX or Vulkan or OpenGL. Then this API talks to the driver, who talks to the GPU. This is the way that things are structured when rendering something, and the biggest upside of Vulkan is that it's very thin. So there's very, very little overhead, and the graphics programmers on the game side, on the game engine side, have a lot of opportunity to optimize very directly, as they like to say, down to the middle.
So it's a direct replacement for DirectX 11 or OpenGL.
As some people have identified the DirectX killer.
Wow, that's a big statement. I mean, Microsoft has poured an incredible amount of resources, time, and energy, and they're not a small company. Who is behind Vulkan?
Actually, who is it? I want to say Kronos or something like that. It's a consortium, and they actually have an umbrella around many types of open source or APIs and things of that nature, and this is one of them. I don't know where its origins are from. Do you know where they're from, Alan?
Yes. So Kronos is the same group who's currently maintaining OpenGL standard, as well as some other standard for GPUs and similar things. The Vulkan itself is very similar to what the Mental API used by AMD recently was. So in a way, it's like Mental joined with OpenGL, and it stands like a kind of a contrast to DirectX 12. So what we expect from DirectX 12, we expect about the same things from Vulkan, with the difference that Vulkan is currently supported both on Windows and Linux and Android.
Yeah, and that's the important thing, is that because it is supported on these and also seems to be something that's been embraced by NVIDIA, and I'm assuming AMD as well, that we'll be able to use the same standard at this level on multiple platforms. And I'm assuming that probably Valve is very interested in this with their Steam engine that they've got with their Steam, what do you want to call it, gaming systems, because some people thought that that's some of the weakness of Linux, is that you're kind of tied to the OpenGL standard, and now they're going to have a lower level API as well to work with. So I'm assuming that they're pretty excited about this as well.
So I have one question for Alan. So what would be, so OpenGL, right, is open source, and this is a new open source. Why not just implement all of this new kind of technology into an already existing open source project like OpenGL?
Well, OpenGL is quite old. It dates way back to the first graphical 3D workstations. And it's let's say it has accumulated a lot of craft over the time, and it's become very hard to maintain for the driver developers, and that's why things are starting to get messy and slow and problematic. So Vulkan is kind of like a fresh start, and it was really needed at this time.
So,
Okay,
and it's,
well,
Mac, it's Mac, PC, and Linux?
No, in fact, I was going to mention that.
Yes.
Sadly, Apple has bowed out of that. They've put all their investment in metal, so they haven't decided not to embrace it, if I remember correctly in my readings. And that's discouraging because, obviously one of the things that Lucky Palmer made the comment last week is the Mac platform really isn't powerful enough to do VR, and one of the reasons they haven't embraced it, and this could have been an opportunity for them, but because they like to stay behind their walled garden, I think that poses a problem in the future, and sadly they will not be able to move past this, and they were requiring developers to work in metal, which adds another level of complexity and time for developers to create games that have comparison performance as what you get on a Windows system. Is that correct, Alan? Did I sum that up?
I mean, it's hard to get into politics about why and what will happen to predict the future, but the truth is that it's not supported right now, and they probably don't have any plans to do it. As you said, they like to have their walled gardens. What we hope, most of the developers hope that there will be maybe some viable wrapper around it so that we can program for Vulkan and then ship it on metal, but it's still yet to be seen if someone manages to do that.
Yeah, well, and I agree with you on that. So let me jump back to my frame here, and let's kind of get into something else. One of the reasons, again, that I've invited Croteam to be on here is they've converted one of the first, what would you call it, AAA type games, or in this case, puzzle games, to this particular engine because, one, it's brand new. So one of the questions I have for you as being a developer, how difficult or easy was it to do this? I know that NVIDIA, in my conversations with them, support this with a lot of tools. Was that helpful? Were they helpful in helping this occur in such a, and I'm assuming, a fairly speedy time frame?
Yes, we did have a lot of support from IHVs, and NVIDIA is always amongst the most notable. Truth be told, it's not easy. It's not easy to port things to Vulkan because it is good. It's a powerful API, but with power comes great responsibility, as they say. So
that's Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly. It asks the developers to do something that normally driver does, but that's necessary if you want to have enough control. For example, you have to micromanage all the memory allocation for textures, vertex buffers, shaders, everything. But on the other hand, that's exactly what we've been asking for the past decade. We wanted to have that kind of control because we are often seeing kind of like things like stuttering and some out-of-memory situations that we cannot really control because these kind of things is opaque to application, and application cannot know, for example, if it's going to run out of memory soon or if some texture is actually not on the GPU right now and the driver is about to swap it. Right now we have a control, the API provides us control for that. The thing is that the current implementation in Talos principle is very, very early, and we are still not using, we have all this implemented, but we are still not using it optimally, and that's why you still see a lot of stutters in some cases when you are profiling it. So the thing is that what you see right now is we are still not covering some things as well as the drivers used to, but we now have the opportunity to cover them even much better, and we are going to continue working on that in the near term, like several months, and we hope to get much better performance from it.
Well, as you can see behind me, Ellen, I got a benchmark of 70.1 frames per second. Yes, there appeared to be some stuttering, but you know what? I had some stuttering in the DirectX as well, so I must have had some other things. So I'm not in any way damning the Vulkan engine for that. I think it's more my machine. The fact is that it started up, ran smoothly. I was able to play it as though I were using the DirectX API. It is amazing that you did it so quickly. I have read that from others that it is difficult in looking at the API myself. Yes, there is a lot of power there, and but which means there's a lot of setup. But they've come out with some new tools that I've noticed. They've got a new wrapper tool now to make it a much easier process, at least to go from the NVIDIA chip from OpenGL to Vulkan. And I will have some time later on to look at that too. But one other question for you, Ellen. Actually, there's a couple of questions. One is, you've taken the time to do this, you've promoted it, and one of the things that, as we both can testify, is that Vulkan will be used on multiple platforms. So with this being the case, are we going to be seeing something, maybe Linux? And actually, I think it may already be in Linux on OpenGL. But what about Android? Are there any possibilities there?
Well, yes, of course. Our primary interest in Vulkan is the fact that it's multi-platform. We want to cut down on our effort needed to provide support for multiple platforms. Right now, for example, Tails Principle is released on Windows, OS X, Linux, and Android, and it supports DirectX 9, DirectX 11, OpenGL. It's also released on PlayStation 4, which has its own API. It's a lot of work for us. Right now, we cannot really say that we can ship OpenGL, for example, on Windows, and we cannot ship DirectX on Linux. So we have to support both of them. Not just to mention that the DirectX 9 and 11, we have to support both of them because some of those APIs don't work on some of the Windows versions, and Windows 9 sometimes doesn't work correctly on the newer Windows because of how the drivers are installed. So it's a huge mess. We hope that Vulkan can more easily resolve this into a lower number of APIs that we'll have to support in the future. That's our primary interest there. Okay.
So out of all that, will I see this on the Shield TV anytime soon?
Yes, it will. We will port Vulkan on Android. We still don't have a time frame for that because we're still trying to stabilize the Windows version and Linux version, and to work on it and optimize it. We will port it to Android in the future. I cannot really now say when, but we will do that.
Well, that sounds exciting, and I obviously will look very forward to that for my own selfish reasons. So one other question for you before we let you go. When is Serious Sam 4 coming out?
Oh, I guess I could see that coming. Yeah, but when is it coming? I cannot say that.
Well, what is the famous line? When it's ready? What was that?
Yeah.
Gabe Newell, isn't that what he says all the time?
We do have quite a good idea of the time schedule that we are trying to hit. But it will be announced when it's time to be announced. And what I can say about it is that we really try to make sure that we satisfy what our fans expect from us here. So as it's a Serious Sam, we can predict that they would expect huge levels and large amounts of enemies to screen at the same time, and some ridiculous situations and crazy fights. And we are definitely going to provide all of those. And much. We'll see you soon.
Well, I look forward to that, or at least one of my sons will. They were big fans of Serious Sam in the first generation. Well, again, thank you, Ellen. You're welcome to stay on. We're going to cover some news items and talk some tips and tricks about the fabrication, scanning, and design of 3D stuff. And so with that, thank you. And I'm going to jump right into this item that I found.
Thanks, Alan.
Why is Vulkan Graphics API important on Android? And this was an article written by Tony Balt, and he kind of talks about the purpose of that. Hang on just a second. Alan, I went ahead and muted you. Hello?
Oh, wow, check this out. Yeah.
Yeah, hang on. Alan, can you go ahead and mute your mic?
I already muted him.
Okay, good, thank you. One of the things, and I again apologize, audience, it's not so bad on our end, but I know that in post I've noticed that the echo coming from our guests who don't use headphones can be severe, so I apologize for that as we were talking if it disturbed you. I will try to do a better job of that in the future of catching that. But so he writes an article, what are the benefits for Android? And obviously when you have a number of companies like Samsung with their Exynos chips, as well as Qualcomm with their Snapdragon supporting it in their GPUs, you're going to get this kind of quality. And as you saw in the video earlier on the Galaxy S7, and it's by the Epic Games, we're going to see some huge, and here obviously is where I got the video from, you're going to see some stupendous stuff that's coming out, especially for
Does the Galaxy S7 have a dedicated GPU?
Yeah, most of them do. They're called systems on a chip, and they have a GPU built in. And if I remember correctly, it's a, gosh, I can't remember the name. It's a 550, if I remember the name. But this tells you.
So they have to make. Do they have to make specific drivers using Vulkan, or?
Yes, they do. They all have to support the API, which means a lower level driver. And currently, most of them use OpenGL, ES or standard OpenGL, ES2, ES3. And there have been improvements, but nothing has been a lower level, as Alan was mentioning to us. And this is a problem because you don't get the real performance. And the other thing here is using, it's called the Adreno 530. That's built into the latest chipset for, I think, the Snapdragon 820, or maybe it's the 850. But here's the key of it. This 530 is the 810. No, it is the 530. I apologize. The Snapdragon 810, which is the previous version, it shows you the performance and the power. So it almost required twice as much power in order to generate even less performance graphics. Yeah. And as you can see there, this is the huge reason. If we can go directly to the metal, as they call it, of the actual driver or the GPU itself, we also have some benefits of power conservation. So that means you'll be able to play your games longer on your phone before the battery dies. It won't get so hot that you can't hold it anymore. Or the case of the Galaxy, they have a heat pipe built into it in order to deflect heat away from the actual chip itself. So they realize, and as you know with the Galaxy Gear VR, that this is going to be extremely important to have very fluid graphics. And here's another running on the ARM Mali GPU, which is the one that's built in the Exynos chips, which is funny, the Galaxy S7 actually comes with two chips, either their own if it's an international, or it comes with the Snapdragon if it's in the United States. And this is strictly based upon the radios. But many people are complaining because the Snapdragon appears to be the better of the two SCOs.
What is this?
This is a demonstration utilizing Vulkan on the Mali GPU, which is part of the Exynos chip from Samsung.
I thought it was a trailer for Tropico or something.
No, we'll see some more stunning stuff here in a moment. So as you can see there, this is all on ARM-based chips, mobile chips. And again, if you want to learn more about it, this is from an article from Tony Bolt on, what was the name of this site? Android Pit. So thank you very much for lending us a hand. But this, in my opinion, is a huge potential, and NVIDIA has also been working with me, and I've actually had some demos utilizing their let's see, it's their Tegra or their TX1 chip as well as their K1 using the Vulkan API, and they're outstanding.
Well,
the number of instances of objects that can be seen. Yeah, so this
is probably good news. This is probably good news for people like me that are really already got my Pi 3 on order, you know. And
well, but again, whoever the consortium is behind the chipset has to make sure they create a low level. But yes, I would think that, and I don't really know. I mean, this has got an ARM.
This has got an ARM Cortex A53 on board the new Pi.
Yeah, but the GPU is what's important there.
Right. Sure.
And I don't remember if it really had something that was a barn burner in performance. And that's the, if you remember, my son James also mentioned that as well. The Raspberry Pi is very inexpensive, but there's a reason for that. It really doesn't have the latest chipsets, and it wasn't made. I mean, it performs really well for video, but I wouldn't use it for any tremendous gaming. There's some chips that are much better for that. So that's about it from the the Vulkan side, and obviously it's going to be very exciting, not only in the gaming environment, but in the visualization. You'll be able to perform some mobile VR capability for architectural work, so forth, that we're going to be showing here in a little bit. And this will all be available in your pocket. And isn't that the dream of all of us, to be able to pull it out and put something on our head and have the ability to be immersed in something without having a huge PC that you've invested money in because you're getting your Rift soon, or with the HTC Vive. Imagine all that being in your pocket. So hats off to the people like Croteam who have already moved
I think
forward.
this is definitely where it's going. It seems like all the kind of like the forward momentum is here. I think for developers, that are, I think there's going to be different platforms. Just like there's laptops and there's desktops, there's going to be obviously some different VR. We're already seeing the emergence of that. So I think I think there will be benefits to both, but I definitely see myself wanting to have more of a mobile experience. The only bummer for me is now I've been kind of backed into the corner by Apple for years now, right? I mean, I was iPhone 1, and through now the 5S, and now they have the 6S and all these other ones, and I've got the Apple Music, I've got my whole iTunes library, I've got all my calendars and my mail, and everything is already Apple, and all my apps, right? I mean, I've already invested probably hundreds, if not $1,000 in apps for the iPhone and the iPad, and so to switch over to the Galaxy is like it's I have to say arrivederci to all that.
Well, in Apple's credit, since I do development under iOS, Metal is pretty good, and the comparison of going from OpenGL on the iOS system to Metal is significant as well. I've noticed some improvements in my frame rates for like Graveyard and other things just by making that switch. So,
I think they're already about 2 years behind in the VR though, as far as like compared to your VR.
The thing about Apple is you never know what goes on behind their Apple walled garden, and they may have been working in parallel. They may be looking at what's going on in the market. As you know, in working with Occipital, there has been great strides being made in a lot of areas with their sensor in the iOS arena that others have not made. So there's potential by third parties to really push this. And as you know, they also bought PrimeSense and have done nothing with it. So who knows what's going to happen from Apple. I don't rule them out, but it is something somewhat disappointing sometimes that those walls are so high and we never seem to know what's going on. And I think in today's environment, having such large walls isn't conducive to business. And I think you're seeing that changing in Apple. I think you're seeing more shows. Remember, everything used to be in the fall. We've got an event coming up in March where they're going to be offering some new devices. So they're realizing that they've got to start leaking more information and getting things out. Otherwise, people are going to jump camp. And as you said, I may go to the Galaxy, and that would be
at least for
VR,
weather. At least for VR.
Yeah, but then if you go for VR, then you'll say, hey, Android's not so bad, and then next thing you know, iOS is collecting dust. So we don't know where that's going, but let's jump into an update. Let's go back to 3dprint.com. We've had them on several times, some of their articles, and so I chose this one because this is one of the latest. But Chris, we broke this story. If you remember,
I should say you broke that story.
Well, thank you. But we did it together. We actually had Nikolai on, and we kind of grilled him a little bit, and obviously got some attention. I had sent some emails out to people like Fred the great Fradini that night saying, hey, look what I've uncovered. He's written his own article. We had Paul on last week who wrote a great article. There's another guy that I'm actually going to show a video on who seems to have a lot of experience in scanning and 3D printing. Got a cool little thing that I think is fun. That was, where's it at? Where's my splunking? That's Cosmo Wenman, who wrote an excellent article with the comparison between the scan. But really, all these people with the expertise have kind of identified there's no way this could have happened through a Connect, and who knows how they got the scan. My assumption is that they found it. Maybe it was on the street, maybe on the floor, I don't know, in the museum, but it really didn't come from a Connect. So there's a lot of theories. It doesn't. The problem with it, and we talked about it last week, is even though the real point that they were trying to make is, hey, this needs to be open, some of the people have written articles about this said, well, if that's the case, why are you so closed-lipped about your process? And as I wrote later on in some of my posts, this really, in our opinion, is a more important story, because if you're using Connect to get this kind of quality, let's share it. I mean, museums who can't afford the ability to create high-resolution scans could afford a Connect, could afford some features in pricing, maybe support a company who has lower-powered stuff. And so that was my concern is we wanted to know more about the technology used, and that didn't come forward, and it appears there may not have been some great technology, which is sad on my part. But yes, who does this all belong to? I think that's a concern. I think that's an important issue that was brought up, and I still back that, but I think the direction they went with it could have been a little bit better, but who knows? It got them a lot of attention.
Yeah, so, and it could have been as simple as whoever took the photos to begin with that got hired could have leaked them, right? I mean, it could have been something like that where he just didn't delete them off of his camera. Could have been something simple like that that actually wasn't really even, or maybe he left his, maybe the studio left that did the processing left their Wi-Fi unlocked or something. You never know. It's just like it could have been done so many different ways, and maybe eventually these the people that put this together will actually release some sort of white paper or tech specs of how they did it or their workflow or something.
So there we are, Chris Kopek and Mike Balzer. Now the sad thing is, obviously I'm not going to give them a pass on this. I do think that by bringing up this Xbox 360 as their scanning device really put a large hole in it, and which means the rest of the story seems very fishy to me. But the sad thing is, and obviously I'll just let it go, but I want to say to the New York Times, you should credit the people that actually put this out, and I think that left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. The New York Times actually wrote a separate article identifying what we had discovered and didn't give us credit for it. So that was a little disturbing, but oh well, we move on, and this is all actually becoming an older story now. As technology moves, we must move with it. So on that note, what do you got in the news?
Well, this one, I think we mentioned in the opener, HP has made some hint that they are on track to ship their 3D printer, their multi-jet technology, sometime this year. And they're going to give us some sort of announcement, apparently, about their multi-jet fusion 3D printer at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. That's coming up.
Yes, tomorrow. I'm sorry, Monday. Monday,
and so this is according to ComputerWorld.com, and obviously we've been following this HP printer. They say it's super strong, and multicolor. Yeah, and we've been following it for a while, and they claim they're going to make an announcement at South by Southwest about maybe the timeline of when we can see this thing go to market.
Well, and I've read some articles as well that at least some investor or an analyst are are thinking this is what's needed in order to save HP. HP has had a few layoffs, and they're really hoping that this will generate some interest and obviously some much needed revenue. So we'll see where that goes. So another person in the news that I'm a big fan of. I've owned 2 of their printers, and that's this upgrade kit that they're providing for both the Ultimaker 2, which is what I had, and the 2 Extended, to turn them into the Ultimaker 2 Plus or the 2 Plus Extended. And this, if you remember, in a number of my conversations and even reporting on All Things 3D, I always had issues with the extruder. And they put a lot of effort and took a lot of feedback from their users to come out with a much better extruder in the Plus. But the good thing about Ultimaker is that they share, and they thought, we're not going to leave you out hanging, so they provided a kit. I do think there's a cost to it, but it will allow you to upgrade your 2 or 2 Extended with a new extruder, which is in the middle here, and a new hot end nozzle system.
Wow.
And some of the advantages of this, and here it is. So it's a fairly intricate process to pull this all out. I have done it. You also have to remove the bottom, if I had a bottom, and get to the actual controller board to make some changes, because you're literally removing the hot end. And then they give you a decal to turn it into a 2 Plus, which is kind of cool. But the important thing, and again, hats off to them, the extruder on this, in my opinion, was the bad part of it. Everything else was great, but they've refined it. They've made it a much easier process. Not only do you have a better extruder, which can vary its pressure based upon materials, which is a cool thing. It also has easy interchangeable hot end nozzles so that you can go from one diameter to the other much quicker. So that's a big plus, because as you know, different materials require different diameters, and the ability to do that quickly obviously will lend itself to be able to print. One of the things that I had issues with is going from ABS to PLA or back. I found that that was not something you wanted to do, at least on my Ultimaker 2. You need to stick with one or the other because the materials clog, and sadly the nozzle clogged a lot. But Ultimaker is a stand-up company, and they have put a lot of time and a lot of research as well as user input into creating this, and hats off to them for creating a kit. Kind of like Formlabs, when Formlabs created their Formlabs, was it the 1X? They provided an upgrade path for those who had the 1 at a very reasonable price. So hats off for them to doing that. They don't have to, and they do. So thank you, Ultimaker. All right, move on to the next item, Chris.
Okay, well, this is actually really fun. This also came from 3dprint.com. So thanks to them. Nervous System unveils a new 3D printed kinematics pedal dress. And I found this. This is part of our 3D design. They've got this video here, and I should just play the video. Here, let's move it back. So they've designed this kinematics custom 3D printed dress, and they've got this model dancing around and showing it off. And it's basically custom printed. It's made out of these pieces, and it just flows and moves in a way that a normal fabric dress apparently won't. And they've got this whole thing with Body Labs that they've come up with a software you kind of put in your dimensions, and you kind of come up with your own customized dress. And
yeah, if you remember, we did an interview with Body Labs, so it seems like they've really progressed with their software.
Yeah, they really have. And then this is like you can adjust the pattern and density, and what kind of pedal the textile structure is using. You can kind of clean it up and change it, make edits, and then you can actually save the garment. And it's pretty incredible. I mean, just to build one of these, I mean, you're looking at, I don't know, few thousand of
Thousands?
these, of these little things that you've got to put together. So, I mean, just the one that they put together, it's pretty intense to
Wow.
think about printing one of these. It can't be
So
cheap.
So do they provide you the actual 3D printable file, or is this...
So apparently they do a simulation on it. I didn't see anything where it actually would export. I think you order it through them. But seriously, incredible amount of work, not only into the software. I mean, the software is incredible. So after printing, the dress can be enrolled into a wearable garment larger than the machine that printed it.
Well, I know my wife really enjoys her, I don't know, her roll-up dresses. There's a certain type of material that it's like a scrunch type fabric, and she can just kind of roll that up and throw that in a suitcase and pull it out, and it still is wearable. So maybe I should get her one of these.
So I think this one they actually printed in one piece. Yeah, so in SLS nylon. So they printed it in one, all rolled up. They printed it rolled up, and then they unroll it. So that's how they, so pretty awesome.
So pretty soon Shapeways will have another business.
Custom. That can't be a cheap dress by any means. I mean, I know there's dresses, like designer dresses out there that are expensive, but I think this is going to add a whole new zero to the designer dress category.
A couple zeros. All right, well, let's move on back into the gaming realm. And the reason I'm doing this is next week is GDC, Gamers Developer Conference in San Francisco. I'll be there a couple of days. As mentioned already, Croteam will be there as well. And many developers will be there because, hey, that's where developers hang out. And one of the things that I brought up as our major theme is, is VR and mixed reality going to be that big new thing that's going to drive the gaming industry back into the green? The sad thing is that many of these large development, certain games I've been hearing about have been dropping like flies. They've been canceled. So even though the gaming industry, some companies like Croteam are doing fine, we're still looking for that next big thing, and maybe VR is it. I know there's been a lot of development. I listened to a couple of podcasts and obviously follow it, and a lot of these companies are moving into that. Now, Alan is still with us, and he may be muted, and so since he's there, I still have a question. I noticed previously that you could enable VR. There's a little code that you could identify, but it doesn't seem to work now. Is that something you're aware of? Because I'd love to see what this looks like using my HEC, my DK2. You want to unmute him, Chris?
Yes.
Go ahead. Nope, still can't. Oh, it's my fault. Hang on. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Alan.
It's okay?
Yeah, it's good now.
Okay. There are a couple of issues there. First is that the API for that is a moving target, and with the differences between Oculus and Vive, and we kind of like we had a lot of work working on one SDK, and then the next SDK comes out, and the things stop working on the that we had before. We had to recode and change various stuff, so it became quite a bit tasking on our time, and we're trying to concentrate more on other things like Vulkan and on Series M4. We do have the implementation working for the latest Oculus. I'm not sure what's going on with the current version when you try to run on the older Oculus hardware. The thing is that while Talos by itself is very interesting, when you wear a VR headset and you jump into Talos, it looks very engaging and very beautiful, because when everything is free around you, it always looks better. But the problem for us was that it's good for for a group of enthusiasts like yourself, and that really like that, and that they get a lot of hours in the VR. But for an average user, they usually get first they get sick from because if the motion is controlled with the controller, it's a huge problem. That's why we didn't want to push this too much, and we don't want to promote it as a full feature like you have it in the menus, because we are afraid that a lot of users wouldn't really be happy with that. We don't want to create negativity up front with the VR. And we believe that it's better to adapt the game for VR, as you can see for a lot of other games that developers do. They change the way that the player moves in the game and everything to make it work better. And another thing is also then it tells a lot of things in the UI is connected with your current view position and view direction when you're carrying objects and connecting them. We were on the verge where we cannot really make it work correctly unless we completely revamp the entire user interface. So we are still leaving this option in VR option in Telos as like a just like an add-on feature for someone who really wants to play with it, but it's not something that we will pursue for now, as they want to push into the like mainstream and try to give it to the general public on VR. We would like to do some more specific things. I can't really say what exactly we are working on, but we are trying to create something that are better suited for the VR experience, so to say, and then we will try to give that to the public.
Okay, well that makes a lot of sense, and obviously a great responsibility on your part. Yeah, I've noticed games like Half-Life 2, which also don't work, so you're not alone in this. In trying them with the DK2, when it was working, I found myself, since I seem to be somewhat tolerant to this, hang on a second, let me bring down the level. I found myself tolerant after a while, but even Half-Life 2 made me nauseous. So if it's not made specifically, I found that sometimes walking, some people have suggested you move your feet when you're actually in the VR world to simulate that. But one of the things that I've noticed in my own development is if you do a lot of porting, meaning going from one location to the other without actually moving, your body seems to be more conducive. Plus, it's faster. And then when you're actually in the area, then you can, either use some type of sensor in your hands to be able to manipulate something. But normally the motion is not walking or something the body seems to have issues with, but remaining static and then using teleportation or some other technique. And the other thing is the UI is very important, and something I have to give credit to Samsung with their Gear VR. They have really worked hard to create, in my opinion, a really nice UI that allows you to navigate by just head moving and clicking with their Gear VR. And the same thing with a few other companies like HTC Vive and Oculus are also working towards providing a development arena. So hats off to you for being patient with that. Obviously, myself being an enthusiast, I wanted to immediately try it. And as you know, I have my own interest in why that would be a possibility. But I can understand why you didn't. So I'm going to move on to my item here. And that is the... I guess the new Tom Clancy, The Division, which I guess has been released, modeled their latest game on New York. So somebody took the time to compare shots from the Tom Clancy game with the actual New York scenes. Wow, and as you can see, these games
that is
are becoming
incredible.
More. And as, yeah.
Imagine if that was your house.
Yeah, well, actually, if you go out and use, and I don't know if it's available on iOS, but if
you're like
you
walking
go
in the
out
game and you see yourself come out of your building, you're in VR, you see yourself come out of the building and walk down. It's doing routine, it goes to all the places that you like, you're like following yourself around. This is interesting.
That would be very creepy. So I'm going to show this little video, so give me a second to set myself up in it. I found that...
you say creepy, I say realistic.
Yeah, okay. That's the uncanny valley in a whole different way. So I'm going to show this little video behind me, and this is I guess another blogger who did a little video. And what they did is they went through and kind of talked about it, and I know if you can hear them behind me. And I guess they did an interview with Sigourney Weaver, but they went in and they talked about the comparison, and here's some actual live shots. Is it live or is it the game? Who knows anymore? But they went through and went out to Google Streets and identified specific areas as though they had actually been there in the game, and then went into the game. I'm going to just kind of jump into there, and here you go. And there they set it up, they look at it, and then, let's see, they should do there we go, they snap it, and now watch the comparison. So they snap a real shot. So they do this several times throughout this video to show how realistic and more importantly, how realistic or it is depicting a real live environment. And obviously they added new items. But
Insane.
so again, getting back on this VR perspective, imagine playing this game and being in these environments and with all these photorealistic effects that can now be done. And here they're in a subway in New York, and then here they snap
now
a
I
shot.
see why this game's getting all the buzz.
Yeah.
Are they? What? Wow. Wow. And who was the studio responsible for this game? Is it EA?
I don't know. Alan, do you know? Since you're still with us, let me bring you back.
Sorry. Yeah. Here. Oh, you gotta unmute him. Or maybe he's.
Go ahead, Alan. You should have a voice here.
There we
You
go.
hear me? Hello.
Hey, who's responsible for Division?
Oh no, I'm sorry, I don't know that by heart.
Okay. No, just curious. We're talking about it.
The game, it really looks great.
Yeah, it does.
Well, as you can imagine, with many of these games, we're getting to the point where it's difficult to distinguish what is reality. And actually, I own the URL for what is reality, and it seems to become more and more of a poignant point.
It's Ubisoft.
I'm sorry?
It's
Ubisoft?
Ubi.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I don't know the engine behind what they're using. I think it's somewhat proprietary.
It's called Reality Engine. Welcome. It's called Artificial Intelligence Reality Engine. Is this the game or is this real? I can't tell.
This is, yeah, exactly. This is real.
Are you sure?
Well, huh?
Are you sure?
Yeah,
What is real?
I don't.
What is
What
fake?
is real?
We don't know.
Yeah. What is real? I got a whole bunch of bumper stickers. Maybe I should start handing them out.
Look at this. Who are these people that are... I mean, I model these parts
we have
in
one sitting with
SolidWorks
us.
all day. I know. I have these parts that I model in SolidWorks, and I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, yes, I made, like, an iteration of a part, and these people are going to be so happy with me. But then when you look at it compared to this, like what these people are doing, it's like, how do they even...
Well, again, I'm going to call on Alan. He obviously, this is what they do for a living, and if you've seen the Talos principle, they had to model a lot of this as well. What does it take to do something like this, Alan?
Oh, well, it takes a lot of time, definitely. But as you probably know, a lot of those things are scanned, and we scan a lot of things for Talos principle, and it's very interesting that there's a nice continuum between the things that are completely scanned, things that are scans that are later edited, and things that are just created manually on the computer. I can really always have praises for our artists for being able to fit all that together without it being apparent that it's not the same thing. But for a game like a Division, it's a huge amount of content, and I think it's really a lot of work and requires a lot of skill to make all that.
Totally agree with you, and I'll jump back to it. So as you can see, the comparison here between real and unreal, or I shouldn't say unreal. That brings up something else.
This
But
is
Tom
just
Clancy
insane.
world, I mean, it is stunning. And to me, I think that, and here, if you want to go ahead and subscribe, there will be a show link to the guy's video. But man, I just feel like we're in, I'm 56 years old. I could never imagine back when I was 8 or 9 years old that this would be my world. And I'm glad that I'm a part of it. I think we are literally stepping into the, what is it called? The Hollow Room from Star Trek. I think we're getting very near that. And
We're reaching singularity, Mike. You think we're reaching singularity?
I don't know. We'll see in my lifetime.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name.
Yeah, we saw DeepMind, the whole DeepMind thing. We would beat the Go player this week. That was a big thing.
Yeah, actually beat him in 2 games already. I think
the
third one is tonight. So yes, we're at a point now that we better start bowing down, because
we better start going that way up to the stars, my friend. We need to get off this blue dot.
I think that's too late already. Oh well.
Okay.
So on to the next item, Chris.
Okay, well, now we're into our section entitled 3D in Medicine, right? Which we cover. And you've got it brought up there.
Oh, then I will go ahead and pull it up. So we're talking about the same thing, huh?
Yeah. So 3D Systems expands their medical capabilities with the new Healthcare Technology Center. 3D Systems, obviously, integral part of the whole 3D printing movement. They've just invested in a 70,000 square foot facility in Littleton, Colorado. That's going to be apparently chocked full of all kinds of 3D and medicine, demonstrations, instruction type things to help kind of, jumpstart medical professionals, whether they're technicians, doctors, nurses, healthcare practitioners, anyone, into utilizing 3D printing or 3D modeling or 3D scanning or even augmented reality, all these technologies that are kind of converging right now into kind of the next wave of medicine. So awesome. This is exactly what we need as a industry leader. 3D Systems, they are kind of they look like they're going to stay the leader for a little while if they keep doing playing moves like this. They're going to leave Stratasys in the dust.
You mean 3D? Oh yeah. Well, they need to do something. As you know, their stock has fallen off the cliff, and obviously they've had a few videos over the last year. In fact, I remember I was at South by Southwest moderating a panel, and they came up a number of times. Remember the dog video of creating the prosthetic for it that put a tear to my eye, and probably yours as well.
Mm-hmm.
They were behind it. They've really been trying to show how 3D in medicine, as you mentioned, scanning, design, and actually fabrication are extremely important. In my own personal case, my wife's skull.
Oh yeah,
I always
exactly.
have affectionately near me. Was an important thing. In fact, I'm going up to Stanford in April to give a talk to a class on the importance of fabrication in medicine. So, on that note, I'm going to jump back to your screen, but
Stratasys takes a hint from Burger King and McDonald's. What Stratasys would do is open a facility right across the street that does the same thing. Hint, Stratasys.
Well,
that's just a free business tip from little lonely me. Little me.
Maybe, I think part of the issue here is that maybe our 3D system doesn't have to reinvent themselves as much, but they could be behind the curve if they don't do something.
Yeah, if you made a destination that was, you go to Colorado, you go to Littleton, if you want to implement 3D into your, medical practice, and you could go to either location, doesn't matter if it's, or you could go to both. They could have symposiums on the different technologies. 3D Systems has tons of technologies you can use, but Stratasys also has tons of technologies you can use that are different and complementary in many ways. So, Stratasys, you got to get ahead of the ball, like 3D Systems is here. So that's just my thought.
I totally agree. And who
Awesome
knows?
though that they're opening. This is exactly. I mean, this is how you move stuff forward. You know, manufacturing is the largest sector of the United States or U.S. economy, right? That's our largest sector is manufacturing. But healthcare services is number 2. So 3D Systems is kind of tapping into both. You just go down the list, right? That's really what you want to do. So,
Well, and you know they've got lots of competition with Stratasys in the manufacturing process. So, you know, hats off to them. It's probably taken a lot of time and investment. May have created a hit for them in the stock market, but maybe in the long run it'll help push them back up and actually reinvent themselves. All right, on to my next one. I think this is kind of funny, and the reason I'm bringing this up, if you remember, we had a guest on from Australia. Remember the professor who scanned cadavers and then created models so that they could sell them or give them away to medical facilities and hospitals and training centers who may not have access to cadavers either by law or because of funding. And they've actually, and in a couple of other articles we followed up, are actually making a business out of that. So that kind of stuck in my mind when I read this article, and that is using post-mortem imaging, the next radiology subspecialty. And that I thought was very intriguing because, as we know, you can irradiate a body with CT scans all you want because obviously they're not going to mine. And one of the things they talked about is that because of that, you don't need the fanciest CT because you're not worried about the dosage. So some of these used or refurbished units can be bought by pathology labs in order to provide this. And another important thing is, you know, my wife says, "Oh, I'm not going to have anybody dissect you in post-mortem," and I don't agree with that. I want to donate my body parts, but you know, she has
so
a
do
thing
I.
or two. But you know, her father did the same thing for her mother, who, if I remember telling you, died of a brain tumor, which was. I'm glad we live today in the time we do, and not back then, because I think sadly my wife would have died as well. But that's besides the point. She's not. She's still here and still as ornery as ever. I hope she doesn't watch this. But the fact is, if they would have had this, maybe people would be less resistant to get post results after somebody dies to determine exactly what's happened to them if they don't have to actually be touched by a knife. So I can see some real importance in that area. Plus, they talk about funding. You don't have to have as number of the pathologist on site. You could have technicians do the scanning, and then later on they could, if they need to, actually do a examination, cut the person open. They can point out specifically the areas, be based upon the CT or even MRIs. And as mentioned, you don't need the fanciest CT scans, and this is something that is going to be introduced in a number of areas. It is still a young industry, and we'll probably see more in it. But again, the potential of using imagery and 3D scanning and fabrication and visualization in a new area is, in my opinion, fantastic. And we'll be following this as we go along. All right, well, let's see what we're in now. I think we're actually in the scanner area, so I'm going to jump right into my next one.
Okay.
You know, we spent a lot of time in the last couple of weeks talking about great inexpensive scanners. And, you know, when I was at, where was it? CES, not in 2016, sadly, but in 2015, Shining 3D, if you remember when I was walking around, had this demonstration of this little device here, the Einscan S. And we followed up a little bit. I was hoping to have them on to talk about it, and that kind of fell through the crack. But they have really made a name for themselves, and they have, there's a couple of videos. Let's see, do I have one? No, it doesn't appear that I did. But there's a couple of videos, but they had this contest, and this particular architect won, and this is an article, actually, I don't have the particular article, but this architect won by utilizing the process to scan a number of things like his face here in different positions. And look at the quality. I mean, it's excellent. And these are some of the people that it's submitted. Essentially, it is, I've already forgotten the technology behind it, but it's a little unique. It's actually in the either the lower end of the violet spectrum. It is a combination of techniques, and from what I could see actually in the demos at CES, and then obviously what you're seeing on this page here, it is a decent scanner. And the cool thing is, and this is the Pro here, but I'll go back to the Einscan S. The price on that is extremely competitive. We're talking barely over $1,000. I think you can get this stateside for about $1,099, and you essentially get this and a turntable, and this is the kind of quality that you can get from it. Now, again, this is probably for the low-end prosumer consumer. And they just came out, and we talked about this before, their Pro version. But I mean, look at the quality. And they have their own software, and look, they tie it in with some of the other applications here. It says less than 3 minutes for a complete circle of a item. That's very comparative to some of the other processes out there. So if you're in the market for something low cost with some good quality, I'm thinking this is probably about next engine quality. It's about 1/3 the cost of a next engine. You might look into this. But the other thing that, and you can actually go out and buy, and there's a few places in the stateside that you can buy this, like I said, for $1,099. There's also the Einscan Pro, which I covered briefly. And this item is a handheld unit, very similar to the Artec or the, I want to say Faro, sorry, the Faro scanning systems, but at a significantly less cost. We're talking about $3,500 for this. And then if you add the color scan module to it, as shown here, that adds, I think, another $500 to $600 to it. So for about $5,000, you have something that would normally cost you about $20,000 to $30,000 in the other markets. And it's completely, not necessarily portable, but obviously handheld. You still require a fairly beefy laptop or something to use with it. And I thought it was funny when I watched the Artec scanning at MedX last year. He had the laptop in one hand and the scanner in the other as he was encircling an object and scanning the process. So I could see that being a market for straps or something to put the laptop in front of you. But here you can see some of the quality of it. And so if you're in the market for something, and the reason I'm bringing this up right now is that we've spent a lot of times about these artists who scan with a Kinect, but the reality is there is companies like Shining 3D who do have affordable scanners that museums could buy. Obviously, they would have to hire somebody to come in and take the scans and then create something from the scans, but it's obviously a lot less than some of the others. And obviously they're trying to bring attention to it by their contest. And so here, if you want to go out, and this again will be in the show notes, different things on Sketchfab that show how this thing actually scans. So, you know, Chris, sorry that I didn't bring this to your attention before.
Oh, no, it's you know, it's constantly evolving. The Einscan Pro, we've been following it, and it's on pre-order still, so it's not quite available. I think, you know, the scanners are moving quick. They're moving. The technology is progressing very fast. There's a lot of competition in the marketplace, and you know, it's only a matter of time before the $5,000 scanner becomes a $500 scanner or a $300 scanner. Because I mean, if you really look at the actual hardware on board, it's not really that. It's really the algorithms and kind of how it puts it together, I think, and kind of the combination of what the recipe for the secret sauce is, right? And so I think the early adopters obviously pay a little bit more for the secret sauce to have the secret sauce before. And then obviously they'll have the consumer version that it's the same secret sauce, but cheaper sensors and.
Well, or maybe not even cheaper sensor, as you indicated. The hardware isn't really the cost. So if you can lower the cost of the intellectual property on it, that's the important thing. But the thing I'm stressing is a democratization of the ability to scan, especially for these museums that don't have the budgets to do so. We need to, as we have seen dramatically in Iraq and Syria now, we need the ability to go in and make scans and archive a number of the artifacts from our past history. Otherwise, we'll lose them forever. And this is already happening.
Well, hey, that brings us into our next news item, which is
what a segue. Go ahead, Chris.
It's right in the same the boat. This came from 3DR, who is this. They make the solo drone. I've got a solo drone. That's my drone of choice. And now they have an enterprise solution. If you click the enterprise solution on the 3DR's website, you can check out. They have released a new partnership with Autodesk and Sony, and they've created a 3D aerial scanning and analytics platform called SiteScan, and it's obviously much more expensive than just because you have to have a license of SiteScan. So it's a new piece of software that you run on a Sony tablet that kind of powers the drone, and it uses a Sony camera instead of the GoPro. And you can actually do 3D scans and site surveys and all kinds of really cool things, they say, that have to do with these sectors: construction, insurance, agriculture, utilities and telecom, surveying and mapping, and public safety. And this package, I believe, for the license of SiteScan, here's the plans and pricing, starts at about $500 a month for the license. Or for now, until June 30th, you can get a license for $299 a month. So seems a little on the steep side, but I guess if you're doing this if you're doing this as your job and you want to try it out, and it'll actually share with Autodesk 360. You obviously need the hardware, and if you want to get the whole package, you can just contact them directly on 3dr.com/enterprise. So pretty cool.
Well, and if the license per month is what do they say? Not continuous, meaning you only sign up for a project. That could be very competitive. I know that some other people are providing licenses in that fashion, where you're not signing up for an entire year. You're signing up for a month or even sometimes a week, specifically for the use of it. So if that's how that works, that would be cool. Do you know if they were at Real 2016? You mentioned the word Autodesk.
I'm not sure. We didn't make it, so I'm not sure if they were there. But so here it is. You can buy a license for $3,600 around. You can buy up until June 30th. You can buy the SiteScan license for a year. It says per month, but it
billed annually.
Yeah, billed annually. Yeah.
Oh wow, $299. No, you're still paying for the entire month.
So so it does seems pretty high to me, because you still. I mean, I don't know of any demo that they have, so it's not like for sure what you're getting before you kind of sink the money into it. And I haven't actually seen any. I don't think they really have any videos even of the system working, but we'll see. We'll see how it progresses.
Very cool. Okay, well, that was our Scanner Darkly system, and now we're going to be moving into a round VR room in a corner? No. How does that go?
VR corner in a round room.
There we go.
Yeah, because VR, it's a round room. Yeah. There's not really any corners in your VR, but you can still have a corner visually.
That's right. I guess.
You thought of this. That was smart. I just got it.
Great. I'm glad you did. VR
Great.
corner in a round room. All
Cool.
right, so on to it. You know, we've talked a lot about the visualization portion of VR, but as you know, when Oculus first came out, they didn't provide any hand controllers. Now it's a big thing. Some people are complaining that those should have been included at the time that the VR unit was available. Some people think that if you compare pricing with those included, the Vive really isn't that much of a dramatic price difference because they feel that they'll probably be about the same. But in both cases, they have found that it's very important. And one of the things many people complain about is that even though they can see something, they can't interact with it. So both of them are providing hand controllers. Well, there's this other company who has just come out called Manus VR, which is right behind me, who's come out with gloves. And essentially they have some type of, it appears some type of elastic material that provides sensing to show finger movement, and then a multi-axis positional unit, IMUs built into them that are Bluetooth controlled into these hands. So that allows you to determine the position, the rotation and axis movement, and your hand movement. Now, the thing that I have found in development is that's great. You can identify something moving around an axis, but you can't tell where it's at three-dimensionally in space. And I have a feeling that's what you're seeing there with the gloves, the red and blue, or the green and blue one. They're actually using a wide-angle lens on the galaxy there to provide that information so it knows where the hands are in space. And then the information is done by the sensors in the fingers as well as the positional controls on the back of it. So I'm pretty sure that's how it works. The cool thing is it's about $250 per unit. That seems a lot, but you're getting 2 controllers for that. And I found a lot of Bluetooth multi-access IMU type devices are at least $100, even more. So that actually seems very competitive. I've got this little video that I'm going to show of them using it with the Vive. And what they do there is they put the Vive controllers on the back of the gloves, and that provides the three-dimensional positioning in space. Did I switch to it? Yeah, okay. So he's doing alien surgery there. But notice he's picking up the... Okay.
Huh. He's doing an alien autopsy.
Yeah, I guess.
What the heck is going on here?
But the cool thing is that he's positioning, obviously, his hands in midair, which corresponds to his view in the VR perspective. And he has this interaction. The other thing that you see is that he's able to open and close his hands, pick up tools or medical or surgical instruments like he's doing there to do things. Now, obviously, you can see that his movements are somewhat pronounced because, you know, there isn't probably a super fine control. But this is, I think, kind of the missing piece. The fact is that they've smartly figured a way to attach the actual controllers. Now, keep in mind that the HTC Vive works on the principle of laser light towers that emit a transmission that is detected by these controllers, as well as the headset, so it knows where it's at in three-dimensional place. Yeah, right. I like your grimace there.
Well,
however,
they've just done a great job with the actual alien autopsy part of it.
Yeah,
it's kind of grotesque.
Or maybe not.
Pretty
but
good.
As you can see, this is one of many ways that this could be utilized. Supposedly there's some haptic sensors in there, so as he gets close to an object, it will vibrate to give him the sensation that he has had impact, or I don't know how finely controlled that haptic sensation is, but it's a good step. It's reasonably priced. I look forward to it. More than likely, I'm going to figure out how to pull out all the cushions in my sofa to go ahead and get one of these developer kits, because I really want to see put it to use. So I thought that was kind of cool. So you have anything to add to the VR corner?
Yes, I do. Let's sit courtside for Big East tournament thanks to VR. So I think we've got. I'm not I don't follow basketball. I play basketball, but March Madness is coming up, and so Fox Sports VR live stream of the Big East quarterfinal, semifinal, and championship basketball games will be going on this weekend. So according to CNBC, all you need is a Samsung Gear VR and your Samsung smartphone, and you can tap into Fox Sports Live VR, and you can watch March Madness basketball as if you're sitting courtside. So this is like, I think that this is going to be a huge deal. This is going to be a really, really big deal because, you know, sports fans, you know, that's one of the things with the televised games. I mean, they're going to have to develop a whole kind of VR camera system, but this is going to be how you watch the games, I have a feeling.
Well, there's been, you know, a lot of work in this area. In fact, I should have brought it up, and maybe I'll bring it up next week. There's a company who actually was awarded an opportunity for some venture funds. I guess they had a contest at Real 2016 that's created a small, about, I think it's $300 to $400 stereo paired camera. You can put two back to back and have a completely immersive experience. Obviously, for things like this, you only need 180 because normally you don't turn your head around. And it's full HD compatible. I think it's a 2 or 4K imager, stereo pair, so you get really good quality 3D. And sadly, I should have brought them up, but the cameras are becoming less expensive. As you know, GoPro, which I covered all last year, has several camera brackets that you can buy. Jump from Google is also something that's going to do this. So not only are you going to be able to immerse yourself, but because of the stereo pairing, you'll have a 3D perspective as well. And if you have not tried this yet, Chris, I think I gave you some VR attachments, didn't I?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, well, no, because my phone is in the dang life proof. So I got to get myself, like, I got to get a Droid or a...
Well, didn't I give you an attachment that clips on as well?
I don't know. Maybe I should try that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the best, but
I'm waiting on my Oculus. It should be here in like May or June.
Well, I'll tell you what, when it does get there, I'm going to come visit you, and we're going to do the show live from your office.
I don't think so.
Fine?
I'm going to be busy. I'm going to be...
Okay, well,
I'm going to be in Oculus land.
I'm going to knock on your plastic frame. But hopefully, yes, we can do it, and we can give a live demonstration when it comes up. I've also talked to iFixit. I may have irritated them. I guess they got some new people there. The old crew is all left, Chris.
Oh,
but,
no.
Yeah. A few of the people like Walt, who was one of the technical writers, has gone back to school up in San Francisco. The person that did a lot of the Maker Faire stuff here in San Luis Obispo has moved on to another company. Actually, went to
fresh blood. It's a good thing. And those guys do a great job. Those iFixit guys, they really do. And they have a new, their new headquarters that they've been in now for a few months, probably a year maybe. But really nice. They're they're like an icon now. When you drive into San Luis Obispo, you see them right there as you pull in, and it's become a real serious thing.
They're located on Monterey Street, so if you ever want to stop in, I don't know if they give tours, but they do have several. They did a teardown on the S7, gave it a really low rating, I think 3 out of 10 for repairability, because Samsung, like Apple, glues everything now. And one of the reason that iFixit actually started all that was for repairability. They wanted to sell tools and kits and show you how to repair your unit instead of having to throw it away. They haven't finished it, but I remember Kyle Wiens, who's the CEO of iFixit.
I use my kit every single day.
That's true. Many of our guests received those kits. But the point is, Kyle Wiens took a lot of footage in Africa where they dump a lot of this stuff, and you have these huge piles, and then you have these kids running around trying to smelt the exotic materials out of it, the precious materials, and the cloud and the stench. What are we doing? Here in this country, we seem
Don't
to
give
push
them
this.
stuff to smelt.
Well,
Get your hands out of there.
Well, the point is we tend to forget that this stuff has to go somewhere, and not all of it is recyclable, and you have this
Look at
problem.
your drinking water, even, it goes into
Kyle
the
has
water
worked
table.
hard.
It's nasty.
Yes, ask Michigan. But on that note, I think they've done a good thing. If I can continue to talk with them, I'd love to go in there and do an interview with them while they're tearing down either the Rift or the Vive, because they will. They've done it with the previous 2 versions. So let's see where we're at now. Oh, how about some spelunking in the tech cave itself? I've got a couple of things. I'm going to show this video, and the reason for it, this was done by the other gentleman who's kind of declined. I wanted to do a round table kind of talking about museum scanning, and obviously the Nefertiti hack. But this might be coming old news, so I may not do that now. But I did want to give him a shout out. I thought this was cool. I kind of went through and looked at some of his videos, and I thought this was very cool. Here's his actual 3D model. But what he did, and we've kind of talked about this, if you create a negative volume, as he's shown there, and then print it, as he's done there, then pour metal in it, guess what happens?
You get a metal print.
You get a metal print. And I thought this was pretty cool. And there you go. So obviously it's probably a low temperature alloy. Otherwise, I don't think that it would have held the shape. But I thought that was pretty cool. If you're interested in doing that, here he's doing. And one of the reasons I'm bringing him up, and again, this is Cosmo Wenman, is he has also put a lot of effort into scanning. Let's pause that real quick. Oops, didn't get it in time. He's put a lot of effort into creating artifacts as well. And probably one of the reasons he's talked about it, he's tried to garner attention to himself and his efforts. And he's kind of sad that something like this, who may or may not be true, has kind of so much attention, where people like Cosmos has actually done a lot of scanning and a lot of work in developing things like this. So hats off to him. I thought I'd give him a shout out. You can go out to cosmowinman.com and look at his stuff and see what he's done. So the other item I have is, hey, I have it on the back of my new loop. Can't talk about it, but underneath there is a Nexus 6 with Android N. What is Android N?
Don't know.
Some people think it's going to be Nougat or Nutella. As you know, they try to name all of their Android versions after some type of stuff. But actually, I should have brought it up again. So yes, it's a Nexus 600. It's now running Android N. They have opened up to anybody who has a Nexus or some of the newer Nexus devices like the 6, the 6 Plus, the 5X, their tablet. And in the past, you had to know a little bit about how to side load new system OSs. But in the new version, literally you just sign up for the beta, and then it becomes an OTA, and then it immediately downloads it. So anybody can get involved with it. But there's a caveat, warning. It does have bugs. Some things don't work correctly. So if you want to do this, don't use it on your main phone because it will probably not work properly. So one of the reasons I did this is that there's been a lot of talk that Google at Google I/O, and that's coming up soon, is going to be announcing some VR-specific changes to Android. They don't seem to identify anything specific right now, but I did notice the refresh rate seemed to be a little different. So maybe they've already included low persistence. I'll be doing some more testing of that this weekend. But the other thing is, we were talking about Vulkan. There is some talks that might be also in there. It isn't right now, but they have improved the OpenGLS to ES3, something or other. There's another extension on it, so it's like the latest in the OpenGL world. So Google is trying to make their device more VR friendly out of the box. So you can apply some of the things that Samsung has done, because they make their phones with their Samsung Gear VR, to cardboard. And if you can do that, then it democratizes the entire Android market, and you'll start to see more mobile platforms based upon that, like headsets and goggles using chipsets from Snapdragon or NVIDIA with their Tegra series to essentially do VR without having to spend lots of money. So there are many things going on in this world in this next year that's going to be extremely exciting. Pretty soon we'll all be walking around like they do in Snow Crash. I don't know. It's coming up. Okay, well, I think that's about it, except we have one more item, and that's the Print Whisperer. I know most of you out there, that's all you wait for.
Okay, so this week I want to talk about, I've been printing a lot on my Lulzbot Mini. Flexible, tons of people loving the flexible. Mike, I got you
I am.
next iteration of your
super cool.
Something you're about to do with iCups. Okay, so NinjaFlex, right, is I've been printing like small pieces out of NinjaFlex and been having like the first print will be great and the next print will be great, but then like the third print that prints out of NinjaFlex is not so great. And I was like, what? I hope it's nothing catastrophic. And what it turned out to be was, so I used the Flex Extruder on the Lulzbot Mini, which happens to be like one of the most acclaimed, if you look online, one of the most acclaimed flexible extruders yet that people have found. People having great luck. It's a direct drive. It just works great. But when I unload the filament, what I've noticed is after printing like a series of small parts, the part quality would degrade. And so if what you do is you just unload the filament and you look at that first like 6 inches of print material, you'll notice because of retraction, it's heating, the filament's hot and it has to retract a lot further to print successfully out of these flexible filaments. Is the retraction settings are typically a lot higher. And so what that does is it backfeeds that hot filament back up into the extruder or your Bowden or whatever you have, and it can create like a 6-inch, like basically inaccurate filament strand. So like the filament strand is like a big blob. It's not actually 3 millimeters, and it doesn't feed, and it's got all these dirty kind of extruder markings on it. So if you've been printing a lot with your and this can happen even with ABS or PLA or any.
It can happen with any material.
Yeah. So what you need to do is just unload your filament and cut about 10 inches off, 6 to 10 inches off, and just put it back in, and just reload your filament, and that'll just clean it up. So I thought, oh man, I hope there's nothing wrong with my Lulzbot Mini. I love this thing. I can't live without it. I hope it's nothing catastrophic. I thought it might be like the nozzle was clogged or something was going on that was like a real bad problem. No, just unload the filament, cut off a little bit, load it back in, and that should take care of it.
I'm going to give a shout out to Simplified 3D. I know you've tried them, and I think you went back to Cura. One of the things that I really love is that before they start a print, they extrude about 2 or 3 inches of material. And I think one of them is to ensure that you've got good flow, but the other is it kind of takes out that little equation that you mentioned of having to do that. So I don't have to do it as often, but I do reverse the extrusion and pull it out, clip it off, and bring it back in. The other thing that I found as a tip here, and I don't know if you do it, I have these little felt rings that I put around the top of my my tube, and supposedly that'll help clean or wipe down the filament before it goes into that. Have you tried that yet, Chris?
To wipe down the actual filament itself?
Yes. Yeah, it's like a little
I haven't really
felt
needed
thing.
to. Oh, you mean to put a little felt, like a dust cap on your, like you can put a little thing that wipes the filament before it goes into the nozzle. Yep. I don't have one of those. You know, I never really ran into any problems, but that's just me, and that may be something that maybe I do down the road. 3D print clean does owe me an enclosure that I've already paid for, and they're late on. So
well,
yeah.
that's sad.
So I'm waiting for. So the enclosure should keep it pretty clean, and I do keep all of my filaments packed away pretty neatly in a kind of hermetically sealed, moisture-controlled environment, and I think that probably helps.
Yeah, I normally do that with most of my materials, but the one that's normally loaded, I have up on a rack. Sadly, mine is in a garage, so can't say I have a litter box for cats, so it's not the best place for particles in the air. So if you have a garage environment or an air particles, that might be something. But so that's a very good tip from obviously from the Print Whisperer again, and he is right on that. In fact, as I mentioned with the Ultimaker earlier, that was something I did more times than I wanted in order to ensure I had good prints.
Yeah, well, especially when you have small prints, it's retracting a lot more per layer, so it will build up kind of that gunky. But it seems to be a really, I mean, it's really easy. You just heat your hot end up, pull the material out, cut it off, and reload it, and that usually just takes care of it right away.
Well, and I have to give a shout out for Chris. He has become a master of the Ninja Flex. I remember when that first came out, it was a bear to work with. In fact, early on, I never got it to work. But the fact that he can print out parts repeatedly, hats off to you. So if you have a need for it out there,
hats off to the Lulzbot Mini. Because
it takes two of you.
It's the PEI build surface. It's the Flexi Extruder. The Flexi Extruder. You got to go direct drive, and you got to have a Flexi Extruder.
Who bought it?
Yeah, me.
Okay. So shout out to Chris.
A-Lift Objects did all the work.
He does this for a living. Don't hesitate to look in on him.
Got a cool. This is flexible.
Yeah,
it works good. No support either. I mean, really good. I would recommend too. Is keep your designs thick like this, like at least maybe like 2 millimeters thick like this. For anybody out there that's printing with NinjaFlex, is like keep your parts thicker and try not to have overhangs that require support, because it's kind of a bear to get the support material off.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. So like this printed no support, it printed perfect, and I would from a production.
So you printed that without supports, Chris?
No support.
Oh, cool for that. That looks, oh man.
Yeah, so you didn't have to.
All right, well, we'll talk about that later. All right, let's move on so we can close it down, and let's see what's going on in our events. I don't think they've changed. So we'll get through these really quick. Let's see what we're going on in March. We have a maker fair in Germany. Cool. So I don't think I'll be taking, and it's low cost, only 5 to 8 euros. That's kind of cool. I think that's about what the Maker Faire was if you wanted to go to the one that we have up in San Mateo. Let's see. I don't know what NSC Olympijski, I don't know how to pronounce that, in Ukraine. And then we get back to our own RepRap Fest on March 18th and 20th at the Elkhart County, Indiana. Hey, you know who that might be? That's our buddies over at See Me CNC, John Ollie. So we'll have to get a little shout out, maybe have him on next week to talk about it. And then we have the 3D additive manufacturing later on in Miami. So if we jump over to the events.
We've got E3 coming up in June. Don't miss that.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to get that far ahead.
Oh, okay.
So we have GDC, as mentioned, coming up next week. There will be a lot of VR stuff now, and that South by Southwest will be giving some interactive conferences. If you're a fan of Obama, him and his wife will be there at South by South, opening it up, and I think that'll be a 360 VR experience as well. At least I've heard that. But South by Southwest obviously is going to have people talking about using VR and augmented reality within their show. So 2 items running in parallel, both GDC, and hopefully we'll be able to cover both. I personally will be visiting GDC Wednesday and Thursday, or maybe just one day, but be back to report on that. Maybe even have, if Chris has a little time, doing some covert, because I'm not going as all things 3D, but maybe doing some covert phone on the floor interviews, or at least showing what's out there. So Chris, if you've got some time, either Wednesday or Thursday, I'll get a hold of you and you can man the production control room during that time frame.
Awesome.
So yeah, as mentioned, the Gamers Developers starts, actually, yes, on the 14th. So lots of stuff going on in the next couple of weeks. And then actually, I'm only going to bring this up because we brought up the Vulkan API. GTC, which is the GPU conference that NVIDIA puts on, is like in early April. That's going to be very important because NVIDIA will probably have some announcement on some new mobile chipsets as well. Okay, well, that's about it. Chris, I leave the rest to you. Actually,
Thank
you know what?
Alan, for coming on from Talos Principal. What an awesome time talking to him and finding out, getting the lowdown on this new system, Vulkan API. Really,
well, I thought you'd
cool.
like that, Chris.
Yeah,
and mentioned even before I had mentioned that I had looking into them, that you were a fan of the Talos Principal, and so I thought you might like actually having
yeah. So, and obviously, thanks to our listeners, and we will see you next week on another episode of All Things 3D.
Bye.